The following program, The Russ Belville Show, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate to the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate any illegal activity and encourage all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers on The Russ Belville Show are their own, and The Russ Belville Show cannot be held legally responsible for their validity or reliability. Viewer discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think that we think if we criminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Yeah, I hear you had a question for me.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
We love it.
Oh, yeah. Welcome, tokers and tokettes. It is Tuesday, October 30th, 2012, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. And better yet, it's got to be just 1 week until we legalize marijuana in America. We are excited about that. Brian the Red's hanging out here in the studio with me. How do you feel about that, Brian?
I am very excited, Russ. I cannot wait till 1 week from tonight when I'll be sitting in the big chair there, bringing the broadcast from 6 different states.
That's right. We 8 different states if we count the city stuff we got going in Michigan and California. Brian the Red will be right here at Rolla J Studios running our Marijuana Election Night 2012 coverage. Check in next Tuesday, a week from today, 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Pacific time. We are counting down the poll closures from the East Coast to the West Coast. We've got a new result to bring you every hour, so you'll want to check in at the top of every hour. We got live coverage via Skype from all those states in their campaign headquarters, where the parties will be going on, where the people will be getting the live results. Make sure you check it out next Tuesday. Brought to you by High Times Magazine and many other great sponsors. Also, welcoming to our virtual studio, Carrie Gallagher is here today. How you doing, Carrie? Good to have you back, Carrie. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm doing great.
You sound great.
Good.
Carrie's got our headlines coming up right after our first break. What's in the news today?
I have so many words today. Today, we're going to talk about Amsterdam. Of course, that's on the horizon, and we're all excited about that. I've got some good news coming from international weed news. I'm going to take you to San Francisco, where a man is denied medical marijuana use during probation. I'll tell you all about that. The courts have made a decision. And I'm going to tell you about some radio ads coming out of Colorado, not necessarily for Amendment 64, plus their poll numbers, all coming up in today's 420 news headlines.
All right. And then behind the headlines, I'm going to take a look at the latest results from the FBI Uniform Crime Reports, some shocking statistics about marijuana arrests here in the United States. You want to stay tuned for that. We've got our Electric Tuesday Daily Toker Tune coming up today, and at 5:30, we're going to take a look at all 6 states voting on medical marijuana and marijuana legalization and get you caught up to date on the latest poll numbers. Who needs the most help? Who's looking good? You'll find out today on the Russ Belville Show. Also, shout out to all our friends out there on the East Coast who are braving Hurricane Sandy. A lot of the people I interview won't be available this week because of that, but we'll be here for you anyway. Stick around.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
We need a new approach to marijuana. Young people have easy access since, of course, drug dealers don't check IDs. Initiative 502 brings marijuana under tight control, maintains strict penalties for selling to minors. and raises millions for prevention and education. With 502, we'll have more resources for us, less profit for the drug cartels, and police will have more time to focus on violent crime instead. Yes, on 502. It's just common sense.
I have a package here for Radical Rick. Is there a Radical Rick here? How about a Rick Russ? Any Rick Russ? Somebody named Freddie Barack has sent him a package. Anybody? What is that? Smells like a skunk.
Jive, marry, grifo, grass, hay. Technically, it's cannabis sativa. The common name, marijuana. She has found a crutch to see her through her difficulties instead of facing up to them and coping with them. And in time, she may be ready to try something different, something better.
Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
And now it's time for our 420 headline news with our news editor, Carrie Gallagher.
With just 1 week until the national election, the state campaigns in Washington, Colorado, and Oregon to legalize marijuana have been busy asking for money for last-minute signage, ads, and phone banking. Opponents in those states are also working down to the wire to try to defeat those measures. In Colorado, opponents to Amendment 64 have spent $250,000 on radio ads in just 5 days, and they still have over $100,000 pegged to buy even more radio time. The initiative in Colorado is polling well, with the most recent polls showing 53% of voters plan to vote yes, and only 43% are planning on voting no, with just 5% undecided. But public support has eroded in places such as Boulder and Fort Collins. The latest radio ads getting the most play features the two most recent Colorado governors, Bill Ritter and Bill Owen, asking voters to oppose Amendment 64. They say that legalizing marijuana would be bad for the kids of Colorado and say that marijuana has no place in the state constitution. They join Colorado's current governor, John Hickenlooper, who came out against the measure last week. It's not too late to donate to the Colorado campaign or those of Washington and Oregon. All three states are looking for phone banking volunteers right up through Election Day as well. You can consult the Google, or you can check it out on RadicalRuss.com to find out how you can help on Washington's I-502, Oregon's Measure 80, and Colorado's Amendment 64. An appeals court in San Francisco ruled on Monday that trial judges can ban medical marijuana use as a condition of parole if you were convicted of possessing marijuana to sell. The three-judge appellate court panel made their decision unanimously, upholding the sentence for Daniel Leal, who was convicted of possessing marijuana for sale in 2008 and again in 2009. He will not be able to use marijuana medically for the next 3 years as he waits for his probation to run out. Leal completed his 9 months in jail for that crime and was only appealing the probation condition that banned him from using marijuana, arguing that the condition violated his right to use marijuana under California's medical marijuana law. He wanted them to limit his use without banning it entirely. But Justice Anthony Klein said that it was justified in this case because of the evidence of a need to rehabilitate and also to protect the public. There have been similar cases and rulings on the issue that allow probation conditions to ban the use of medical marijuana before, but the state appellate court sent a very detailed 22-page opinion, sending out the message very clear that if you are convicted of possessing marijuana to sell, the courts can ban you from using marijuana medically. Leal has not yet made a decision if he plans to ask the California Supreme Court to review his case. And Amsterdam's current administration has been trying to rid the country of drug tourists who travel to Dutch cities to purchase and consume cannabis. They have been passing laws to restrict non-Dutch residents from buying cannabis in one of the country's famed coffee shops. The ban on tourists buying cannabis has been put in place slowly, leading up to Amsterdam, the largest community of marijuana coffee houses that has attracted cannabis-loving and curious tourists from around the world. Amsterdam's ban was to go into effect on January, but they have had some some difficulty in implementing the new policy so far. The plan was to give Dutch residents a weed pass, a card available only to Dutch citizens that would have to be shown to purchase cannabis. Critics say that Dutch residents would never get the weed passes, particularly with the current conservative government in power. Marijuana is technically illegal in the Netherlands, but the government does not prosecute marijuana possession in small amounts, and marijuana is allowed or tolerated to be sold openly in coffee shops. Some city councils wanted the ban, but many do not want to ban tourists from marijuana coffee houses. They see the benefit from the dollars that coffee shops tourists bring to their cities. But this week, the weed pass provision has seemed to run its course. The government revealed their new plan, and they have abandoned the weed pass idea and replaced it with a provisional governing pact with certain cities, saying that they only want marijuana sold to Dutch residents, but leave that enforcement up to individual cities. The city of Amsterdam, that takes in the most dollars from marijuana tourists, is against the ban. Cafe owners were telling media today that they are satisfied that the Dutch cannabis policy will remain unchanged in the city. And I want to send a quick shout out to our East Coast friends on today's news. Stay safe, warm, and dry, if possible. This is Carrie Gallagher for the Russ Belville Show, and this is your 420 headline news for Tuesday, October 30th, Halloween Eve.
Thank you, Carrie. And when we come back, we go behind the headlines and take a look at the latest FBI Uniform Crime Report and some shocking data on marijuana arrests in America. Stay tuned. This is the Russ Belville Show.
What's happening, cool cats? This is Big Daddy, and I want you to cruise on over to the Funky Roller Rink. We'll be grooving all night long. Doors open at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, every Thursday night, right here on RadicalRuss.com.
Funky-licious.
Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals.
Welcome back, everybody. Time for us to go behind the headlines and take a look at the latest data.
Pay me to say that.
Coming from the FBI's Uniform Crime Reports for 2011, which reveal that over the past year, the state and local law enforcement agencies that have reported to the FBI claim they have made 757,969 arrests in America for marijuana. Hold on, though. Before you boo too much, that's actually good news. That's a decline of over 95,000 marijuana arrests in the past year. So yeah, of course it's bad when anybody gets arrested for marijuana, but it's always good when fewer people are being arrested for marijuana. And these latest numbers from the FBI Uniform Crime Report are the biggest one-year drop in marijuana arrests by numbers since Richard Nixon, since the war on drugs began. Over 95,000 people, fewer people got arrested for marijuana than the year prior. That's the biggest overall drop ever. Now, if you want to compare based on 1 year drops percentage wise, you know, of course, 95,000 compared to how many we arrest these days. How does that compare? It's the third biggest drop of all time. 11% fewer marijuana arrests this year than the prior year. That's the biggest percentage drop in 20 years. You have to go all the way back to 1991 in George H.W. Bush, where there was a drop of 12%, and before that, 18%. I know a lot of people find that hard to believe that George H.W. Bush is the president who reduced marijuana arrests the most, but it's absolutely true. Over George H.W. Bush's one term in office, marijuana arrests decreased by 13% if you count the beginning of his term to the end of his term. Second, President Barack Obama. 10.6% drop in marijuana arrests during the term of President Barack Obama. Number 3, President Jimmy Carter, who had a 9% drop in marijuana arrests over the course of his term. Now, in other statistics for this FBI Uniform Crime Report, we also find the percentage of people arrested for marijuana is becoming less and less people that are arrested for mere possession. It used to be that the marijuana arrest figures would be anywhere from 88 to 90%. Over the 2000s, 88 to 90% of the arrests for marijuana were for possession alone. That figure has now dropped to 86% for possession alone. Now, the FBI Uniform Crime Report does not try to attribute why these arrests may change or for what reason they might go down, but I will speculate that the increase in the number of medical marijuana states is one factor that has led to a decrease in these arrests. As we see more and more patients getting on the rolls, up to 56,000 here in Oregon, over 100,000 in Washington, certainly 1 million, maybe 1.5 million people with recommendations in California, the numbers that we see in Colorado and Michigan, all of those patients represent someone who would have been arrested for marijuana possession sometime in the past and is now protected from arrest thanks to these compassionate use laws. That, I believe, is one of the reasons we're seeing a decline. Another reason I believe we're seeing a decline is the continued fight by those of us on the activist front to get people's perceptions of marijuana to change. We are now seeing Gallup polls and other polls showing 50% or more support for marijuana legalization. The latest poll out of Huffington Post showed 59% support for marijuana legalization. So somewhere between 50 and 59% of the American people these days believe marijuana should be legalized. And when we start to take a look at whether or not marijuana should be punished, that is, should it be decriminalized, maybe give you a fine and a ticket, but don't send you to jail or give you a criminal record, that support jumps to 72% all across the United States. And when we look at allowing people to use marijuana for medicinal purposes without punishment, it jumps to 80% all across the United States. This rising tide of public sentiment against the punishment of marijuana consumers certainly has something to do with fewer and fewer of us being arrested. The more we stand up for our rights, the less they can trample on our rights. And we are beginning to see this in effect. Another possible consideration for being fewer marijuana arrests may just be a bad economy. It just may be that some of these police departments, some of these local cop shops can't afford to be spending the time arresting marijuana consumers like they used to. It'd be interesting to get some data, some figures on those as well. And the other interesting note from the Uniform Crime Report from the FBI this year is that once again, violent crime is dropping in this country. We are now a country that has some of the lowest violent crime ratings that we've ever experienced. And I believe that a large degree of that also has to do with our growing tolerance and acceptance of alternative lifestyles, including the use of marijuana for people who like to use it for recreational purposes or for medical purposes. You know, as we see these numbers continue to go down and as we see these poll numbers continue to go up, it's going to be harder and harder for the prohibitionists to maintain the Schedule I lie, to maintain the fiction that marijuana is somehow harmful to society, somehow harmful to our communities, when so many people now believe in its legalization, when so many people now are finding out the science about marijuana and learning that it doesn't cause people to go insane, does not cause people to become addicted to heroin, does not lead to great increases in crime or great decreases in productivity. And when we get marijuana passed in 1, 2, or all 3 states this election year, and the next couple of years as these programs are implemented, it is going to be harder and harder for the prohibitionists to continue to stonewall, to continue to try to obfuscate and fool the American people from returning to their hemp heritage, returning to their medical cannabis, and returning to their use of marijuana as a recreational substance. You know, this goes back a long time in this country. 1611 was the first hemp plantation at the Jamestown colony here in the original American colonies, I should say. 1850 is how far we can look back to the use of cannabis as a preparation for medicines. Cannabis and opium being the 2 most popular preparations from 1850 to 1920 in United States medicines. And we can look all the way back to the early 1900s as the jazz musicians began spreading the the culture of reefer and jive and muggles to how far back our recreational marijuana community goes to. And if you really want to split hairs, we can say that it's become a major cultural phenomenon ever since the early 1960s, when we started to see the beat poets coming out through the late 50s and the early 1960s, starting to see all those others. So it is time to legalize marijuana and stop arresting these people. 757,000 is still too many.
You know what else it's time for?
What?
I think it's time for a break.
We better take a break. Be right back.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would send you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
We all know where the money from non-medical marijuana sales is currently going. It doesn't need to be that way. If we pass Amendment 64, Colorado businesses would profit and tax revenues would pay for public services and the reconstruction of our schools. Let's vote for the good guys and against the bad guys. Let's have marijuana tax money go to our schools rather than criminals in Mexico. Vote for Colorado. Vote yes on Amendment 64.
Yarr! Thar be pirates here! Har, 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 har.
I was a Marine for 6 years. I deployed to Iraq twice. I came home and started having the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Marijuana helped me from the moment I started using it. It calmed me down, it slowed my heart rate down, my anxiety was almost gone immediately. Please vote yes on Amendment 64 so that other vets don't have to suffer.
Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Electric Tuesday, featuring the latest in electronic dance music and other cutting-edge genres. You can get downloads and more information about all our Daily Toker Tunes by visiting music.radicalruss.com. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tune.
All right, time for some Electric Tuesday music, and we're looking at the cover right now. Euphoria, Sweet Dreams of You, featuring Julia Dowler, is our tune for today. Coming from Diffusion UK is the artist. So let's just get right to that and go into Diffusion UK. This is Euphoria, Sweet Dreams of You.
Sweet dreams of you. Every night I close my eyes, feel you here so deep inside, filling my whole being with light, help me make it through the night. I know I can rise above in the essence of your love, to a place beyond this earth, somewhere I know Once the haze of morning's gone, like the mist of Avalon, and the sun begins to rise, wipe the shadows from my eyes. I remember all that's been, all I've had and all we've done. I know one day I'll return to the place beyond this earth. Somewhere I know, somewhere I go, somewhere we sweet dreams of you.
You can never make prohibition work. Given the failure of alcohol prohibition, and also of similar prohibitions elsewhere, it was easy to predict the problems that would arise out of marijuana prohibition. When President Nixon declared a war on drugs in 1972, I wrote a column in Newsweek in which I predicted all the consequences that would happen from it, and in which I came out against it and said it was a mistake and would be harmful the same way that alcohol prohibition would be harmful. It didn't take a genius to do that. Far from getting anything from our money, we're spending our money where we shouldn't. We're wasting money. Oh, I think almost every economist would agree that it is that this government gets itself into trouble to interfere with voluntary behavior. You see, people don't realize that the real difference between something like marijuana prohibition and theft or murder is that marijuana prohibition is a victimless crime. You have a willing buyer and a willing seller. The major basis for my opposition has not been how badly it's worked. It's not been the fact that it's produced a lot more harm than good. It has been primarily a moral reason. I don't think the state has any more right to tell me what to put into my mouth than it has to tell me what can come out of my mouth.
The cannabis community includes a diverse set of activists and nonprofits working to end the prohibition of marijuana. We take the time to hear the stories of reform on the Russ Belville Show's Cannabis Community Chat.
All right, folks, welcome back. It's just half past the hour here, and we are so excited to be 1 week away from Marijuana Election Night 2012. And we hope you can all join us here at RadicalRuss.com and TheWeedBlog.com for our live coverage of Marijuana Election Night. We've got reporters in 8 different states who will be bringing you live coverage as the polls close from time zone to time zone with the latest results at the campaign headquarters and parties where the people who worked so hard to get these things on the ballot and worked so hard to pass them will be reacting in real time on our live stream to the results as they come in. We start with Massachusetts question 3, which is the medical marijuana initiative out there. Their polls close at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern, and we'll have Mike Crawford from Boston as our correspondent there, bringing us the live coverage from the Question 3 HQ. Then we're going to go to Michigan, where their polls also close at 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be visiting with Rick Thompson from the Medical Marijuana Show. They've got decrim measures in Detroit, Flint, and Grand Rapids, and a low priority vote in Ypsilanti. Then at 5:30, weird closing time for the polls in Arkansas, 5:30 Pacific time, which I guess 7:30 Central. And 8:30 Eastern, Arkansas Issue 5, which is their medical marijuana proposal. We'll have Ryan Denham from Arkansans for Compassionate Care from their headquarters in Little Rock, Arkansas. Then we go to the Mountain Time Zone, where we get our own Kerry Gallagher there at the Colorado Amendment 64 headquarters with Mason Tavert and Brian Vincente. Their polls close at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, and their, of course, Amendment 64 is for legalization of marijuana. Then we move to Montana, Mountain Time. 8 o'clock Mountain Time, 7 o'clock Pacific Time, where Heather Morris with Montana Normal will be bringing us the updates on the referendum 124, whether to keep the new awful medical marijuana law. This is a weird one. We're hoping for a no vote on this one. We want this one to fail and go back to the original medical marijuana law. Heather Morris will join us at 7 Pacific. Then at 8 o'clock Pacific Time on to Oregon, where we'll have Ico, Michael Baccarat, and Herb Thrasher, or Scott Gordon, from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. They will be with the Measure 80 campaign at the Cannabis Cafe, I believe, is where they'll be having their result party. Also, here in studio, manning the coverage here from Oregon, we'll have Brian the Red running the engineering. We'll also have Iva Cunningham and Jennifer Alexander from A Different View here to man the coverage. Their show is every Tuesday night anyway. You can catch a new episode tonight at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, A Different View with Jen and Iva. They'll be here for coverage. Also, I believe Kaliko and Sam will be here, and a bunch of people probably coming over to party. I, though, will be up in Seattle at the I-502 New Approach Washington party with Allison Holcomb and all the volunteers up there to bring you the results of I-502, also marijuana legalization, right up here in the Pacific Northwest. So being just 1 week away, our coverage will start at 4 p.m. Pacific, run through 10 p.m. Pacific, right here at RadicalRuss.com and theweedblog.com. And for the first time ever in an election, an American election, we got 3 states voting on legalization at once. In 2006, we had 2 states. This time we got 3 states. And this marks number 9, 10, and 11. The 9th, 10th, and 11th time an American state has voted on marijuana legalization. So this doesn't happen every election, people. Folks that are thinking, I don't like this one, I'll vote for the next one that comes around. There might not be a next one that comes around. Think about the decriminalization wave that went through the 1970s as the polls were rising in support for marijuana legalization. From 1973 to 1978, NORML and their allies decriminalized, starting in Oregon and ending in Nebraska, 11 states in a row, and then bam, that door shut on them. There were no more victories until 1996's Prop 215. There was a new conservative Reagan administration, a Just Say No, a backlash from parents. And I bet a lot of the people that thought, I don't like this decriminalization, I'll vote for the next one that comes around, didn't get that chance in the late 1970s. So don't miss your opportunity to vote for marijuana legalization. In addition to those 3 states, we've also got 2 states voting on medical marijuana legalization. So we've got possibly the 18th and 19th medical marijuana states to be added. And then we've got Montana that is voting to return its original medical marijuana law that the people voted as an initiative, and the legislature overturned this last session. So here's a breakdown of those 6 states. I'm going to go through each one of them, and I'm going to give you a little bit of the details of what's included in that initiative so you have an idea what people are voting on, and also what their latest poll numbers are. So here we go, and you can find all this data with hyperlinks back to the latest polls at our blog at RadicalRuss.com. For Massachusetts question 3, this is a medical marijuana initiative that would allow the use for cancer, glaucoma, HIV/AIDS, hepatitis C, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, or Lou Gehrig's disease, Crohn's disease, Parkinson's disease, and multiple sclerosis. Did you notice that pain isn't in there? And nausea isn't in there? And seizures isn't in there? It also allows patients to possess a, quote, 60-day supply. And then the state is being mandated to define what a 60-day supply will be. There will be up to 35 licensed dispensaries, and the only way you can grow your own marijuana at home is to apply for a hardship exemption that can be approved or denied by the state. Now, the latest polling on this comes from the Boston Globe as of Monday, or actually Sunday, the 28th. Their polling was showing 63% support for marijuana legalization in Massachusetts. That's right. We're at 63% in Massachusetts with just 28% opposed. Moving on to the state of Arkansas, their issue 5 is medical marijuana, also a medical marijuana bill. Now, the conditions that this bill would allow are cancer, glaucoma, HIV/AIDS, hepatitis C, Lou Gehrig's disease, Tourette's syndrome, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, post-traumatic stress disorder, fibromyalgia, Alzheimer's agitation, cachexia, peripheral neuropathy, intractable pain, severe nausea, seizures, epilepsy, muscle spasms, and multiple sclerosis. It would also offer reciprocity to other states' cardholders. So if you were a medical marijuana cardholder from Oregon, you could go to Arkansas and still be protected. It will allow patients to possess up to 2.5 ounces of usable marijuana. It will provide up to 1 dispensary for every 25 pharmacies there are in a particular county, with a minimum of 1, I believe. It will allow you to grow up to 6 flowering plants that are greater than 12 inches tall, but only if you do not use a dispensary, and only if you live greater than 5 miles away from a dispensary. Caregivers may grow up to 20 plants for patients and be reimbursed for not just supplies, but also labor. And it contains employment non-discrimination. You can't be fired or not hired or anything like that because you're a medical marijuana cardholder. Same for education. Can't be kicked out of school, denied education, etc. Same for medical treatments like organ transplants. You can't be denied because you're a patient. And child custody. You cannot be discriminated against for being a medical marijuana patient. So when you look at this is a fantastic medical marijuana bill, or initiative, I should say. The question is, was it introduced in the right state? Because as we look at the polls, the latest Talk Business poll coming from Arkansas shows the measure only has 38% support with 54% opposed. Yeah, it's kind of shocking, I agree. It might be the kind of thing where if Massachusetts and Arkansas had swapped measures, maybe they'd both pass, with Massachusetts having so fewer number of conditions and only hardship for home grows. It's hard to say, and it's hard to say whether or not a more strictly worded conservative initiative in Arkansas would have stood a better chance or not. But as we look at the trends in the polling from these two states, you can make of it what you will. Looking back to August in Massachusetts, support was at 58%. Then it grew to 59% by September. And then the last Boston Globe poll, it was at 69%, and now down to 63%. So all the way back to August, this measure in Massachusetts has had majority support. Looking at Arkansas issue 5 back in July, it had 47% support, and support has gone down since July. 44% in the last 3 polls are 44%, 38%, and 38%. So, unfortunately, I wish things were looking better in Arkansas. If you can help folks in Arkansas, go to justsaynow.firedoglake.com, or if you just go to Google and type in Just Say Now, this is one of the blogs out there that's putting together all sorts of phone banking opportunities for people all around the country to get involved. It looks like Arkansas needs our help. So please, if you can get involved and help Arkansas, please do. Also, you can log on to arcompassion.org. That's AR for Arkansas, arcompassion.org. And they'll certainly take all the help they can get from you. All right, now moving on to Montana, where it's a weird situation in Montana. They had a great medical marijuana law that the people passed by initiative. Then last year, the legislature repealed medical marijuana completely, and the governor vetoed that. So the legislature came back with this new Senate Bill 423 that severely restricted the medical marijuana law. It pretty much wiped out the patient registries and their medical marijuana industry. So now there's this referendum, and the way the referendum works is voting for it means that you want to keep the new law. So we want to see this go down. We want to see a no vote on this one. So here's what people are voting on for referendum 124 in Montana. It would keep the new legislature passed medical marijuana law. It would keep it so now only cancer, glaucoma, and HIV/AIDS patients can qualify if their condition, quote, results in symptoms that seriously and adversely affect the patient's health status. So it's an extra little hoop they have to jump through here that seriously and adversely affects the patient's health status. For pain patients to qualify, this is, if you're voting yes, you're saying that you want this. Pain should only qualify if there is, quote, objective proof of the etiology of the pain, end quote, or a second opinion. So in other words, if you vote yes, you're saying, yeah, you should only get medical marijuana for pain if you got a MRI that proves you have pain, or you can get 2 doctors to say you have pain. That's the new restriction. Another new restriction people are voting on there, nausea and seizures would only qualify if they're intractable. Intractable means that you've tried everything else. You've tried every other pill. You've tried every other therapy, and nothing else works. Medical marijuana, the medicine of last resort for nausea and seizures. That's what people are voting yes or no on. And finally, patients must grow their own marijuana or have someone grow it for them for free. And the person growing it for them for free has to submit to a federal FBI background check. So after all the raids and all of the prosecutions in Montana by the feds, you can imagine a lot of growers are really excited about, registering with the FBI. So currently a yes vote would keep all of those restrictions. Yeah, so we don't want that to pass. We don't want that to pass. But unfortunately, looking at the latest poll from Montana State University Billings conducted on the 18th of this month shows that only 30% are voting no. Yeah, only 30% voting no, 60% support for keeping the new restrictive medical marijuana law. Yeah, I know. It's terrible. Now let's move on to the legalization states. As we look at the legalization states, we'll start with Colorado's Amendment 64. Here's the details. It would legalize marijuana for adults 21 and over. That's your age limit. You'd be allowed to possess 1 ounce of marijuana outside your home. You'd be allowed to grow up to 3 mature plants inside your home. And you'd be allowed to possess all the marijuana that you grew from all the 3 plants that you had ever grown in your home. You'd be allowed to give up to 1 ounce to another adult, 21 or older. It would establish a commercial marijuana market. It would maintain the current medical marijuana law. It would maintain the current DUID law. And it would legalize industrial hemp. Now, the polling on Amendment 64 has been generally favorable. I have a couple of polls, one from August and one from October, that showed it at less than 50%. Survey USA in mid-October showed 48% support. But every poll that has come out has shown greater support than opposition. And the latest polling from Public Policy Polling dated October 25th shows 53% support for legalization with 43% opposed. Now, that generally comports with the numbers we've seen since August. In August, Public Policy Polling showed 47% support. So the same polling organization has seen a 6% rise since August. Now we move on to Oregon's Measure 80, and Oregon's Measure 80 would legalize marijuana for adults 21 and older. It would allow adults to possess unlimited amounts of marijuana. It would allow adults to grow unlimited amounts of marijuana. It establishes a commercial marijuana market. It maintains the current medical marijuana law. It maintains the current DUID law. And it makes completely unregulated industrial hemp, which includes all seeds and starts of all cannabis varieties, not just hemp. Now, Oregon Measure 80 has been having some difficulty in the polls. We have seen this in the past two Survey USA polls. In September, Survey USA showed 37% support, 41% opposed. Survey USA in October showed 36% support, 43% opposed. Yeah, but the one thing that the activists have been hanging their hat on here in Oregon is the fact that there's a large number of undecided voters. With the undecided voters, yes, 21 and 22% undecided voters. But that has changed. We've just today gotten a new poll from the Oregonian, our state's largest newspaper, dated today, showing Oregon Measure 80, unfortunately, losing at the moment 42% support to 49% opposition, and now undecided is just 9 percentage points. Yes, so it's looking as if Oregon Measure 80 has to convince every single undecided voter to vote for it, based on this poll, in order to pass on Election Day. We will keep you posted. And again, just as we said for Arkansas, we need to get some help out to Oregon Measure 80. If you can get involved, go to octa2012.org, OCTA2012.org, or go to OregonLawReform.com. Either way, you can go there, get information on how you can do phone banking, how you can get out the vote, help people. Here in Oregon, our vote is completely by mail. So people have gotten their ballots already mailed to them. Many of them are still sitting there waiting to be filled out. I know mine is. So there's a lot of people out there that are waiting to be convinced. If you can help with the phone banking, go to OregonLawReform.com or go to octa2012.org and help us out here in Oregon. Let's make a good showing here. And finally, taking a look at the last state in our three to be pursuing marijuana legalization in the election next Tuesday, Washington's Initiative 502. Now, this initiative would legalize marijuana for adults 21 and older. They'd be allowed to possess 1 ounce of marijuana, 16 ounces of infused solids or edibles, or 72 ounces of infused liquids like tinctures, or maybe hash oil? No personal home growing would be allowed under I-502. No home growing at all. But it would establish a commercial marijuana market. It would maintain the current medical marijuana law. Controversially, it would establish a new 5 nanogram per se DUID law, and it would legalize industrial hemp. Of all the measures on the ballot this year, we have the best polling numbers, aside from Massachusetts' medical marijuana. We have the best polling numbers for Washington I-502. Dating all the way back to June, public policy polling was showing a 50 to 37 lead, 50% in support, so majority support all the way back in June. And poll numbers have moved around but generally stayed above 50% since then. In July, 55%. In September, 57%. In October, 3 different polls, 51, 55, and 54% support. Opposition, the greatest opposition found on any poll, has been 41%. I would say the chances are really good that Washington State will legalize marijuana this year. So what's the takeaway on all of these results? Well, I would say the takeaway on this is that marijuana is going to be legalized in the United States this year. I'm very excited about that. But it looks to me like the conservative medical marijuana measures, that would be Massachusetts and Montana, and the conservative legalization measures, Colorado and Washington, are likely to pass, and the liberal measures that we would like, Arkansas and Oregon, are going to struggle to break 40% of the vote. There's a lesson there.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Marijuana legalization is on the Oregon ballot this November. Measure 80 will institute regulations that treat marijuana like alcohol. Measure 80 will provide jobs and tax revenue we so desperately need. Measure 80 will protect children by moving the marijuana market to adults-only stores that check for ID. Measure 80 will free up police resources to focus on real crimes, not the 1 out of 7 adult Oregonians who responsibly consume marijuana. Vote yes on Measure 80 and donate to Oregonians for Law Reform today.
My 36 years as a police officer in Denver, I can't recall a single incident where marijuana was a cause of violence. There's plenty to do without having to spend all your time going around looking for a marijuana bust. It's a matter of setting your priorities. Regulating the sale of marijuana will allow law enforcement to direct resources towards serious crime. To me, the regulation of marijuana means safer communities. Please vote yes on Amendment 64.
The Russ Belville Show reminds you to never smoke and drive impaired. Hang out for a while and share.
Cause the day was hard and your work was long and you need a break from all that's wrong. You better look at the clock cause it's 4:19. Time to reach in that pocket for your bag of green and smoke that weed.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical rant.
Just a little bit of time here at the tail end of the hour to take a swipe at a couple of editorials that came across the desk here on medical marijuana and on marijuana legalization. The first one comes from the Boston Globe. The editorial is entitled, "Medical Marijuana Raises Too Many Unanswered Issues." This would be the Boston Globe's editorial department here. Too many issues with medical marijuana. By God, we ought to let, 17 other states try to figure this out over a period of 15 years. Before we try something. Oh, wait, that's what's happened. Too many issues. All right, so let me get into what they think their issues are. They start by saying seriously ill patients who feel that marijuana eases their pain should have an opportunity to get legal access to it. That's why so many states, including in New England, are seeking ways to make medicinal marijuana legally available. The question is how to do it. And then they go on to say Colorado and California have loosely written laws that make it so widely available there's 1,000 clinics in Los Angeles alone. But the measure leaves voters with a number of other substantive questions. How can the state guarantee a safe supply of marijuana? And under what terms is marijuana usage safe? The answers, unfortunately, aren't clear enough. Because marijuana has been illegal and isn't regulated through the FDA, there aren't consistent guidelines for its use. Without such rules, Massachusetts shouldn't put itself in the position of dispensing a drug it can't safely regulate. Despite some persuasive arguments in favor of marijuana's medicinal properties, voters should check no on question 3. All right. So their whole thing here, they say question 3 is essentially an attempt to end run around the FDA, which refuses to regulate it. Yes. Okay, I see your point there. And they say the only truly safe way to legalize marijuana will be through the FDA. I love this attachment people have to the FDA. We've got to let medicine go through the FDA. The Food and Drug Administration's got to go through the federal government to make sure that it's safe. Have you ever turned on your television and seen an ad for some law firm? Have you ever taken this certain drug and had the effects of, all, and then they list a bunch of side effects and talk about how you can sue because there's a class action suit because the FDA declared that drug to be safe and turned out it wasn't. Anybody ever heard of Vioxx or Fen-Phen? There's every single drug that is ever recalled in the United States is recalled after the FDA declared it to be safe for public consumption. Meanwhile, we have this other drug, marijuana, that has been used by patients in medical marijuana states for the past 15 years, and not one of them has died. Not a single death. Vioxx, 55,000 deaths. Marijuana, 0. So don't give me this FDA, oh my God, we'll never be safe. It's a ridiculous red herring argument. And the people that are at the editorial board of the Boston Globe ought to know better. Now, the other guy who's been out there beating the drums for prohibition, David G. Evans. David G. Evans, who's a special advisor to the Drug Free America Foundation. Remember, that's Calvina Faye's group. And really, there's only like 6 or 7 or 10 of these prohibitionists around anymore. They just appear everywhere. They got like little sock puppets that appear everywhere. But David G. Evans opens by saying this is U.S. News and World Report, by the way, legalization will cause a tremendous increase in marijuana use. Based on the first of all, marijuana legalization will cause a tremendous increase in marijuana use. How could that be? How could there be a whole bunch of people who right now aren't smoking pot that when it becomes legal will suddenly want to? How could that be? What would make a whole bunch of people not take a drug only because it's illegal, but then want to take it when it's not illegal? Because I'm willing to bet that if heroin were legalized tomorrow, you wouldn't see people lined up at the heroin store any more than who are already using heroin. And I think the same thing exists primarily for marijuana. Sure, we legalize, there might be a slight uptick in how many people try it, and there might be a slight uptick in how much is being used by the people already using it, but that'll be temporary. People that want to smoke pot are smoking pot. But Evans goes on to say, based on the experience elsewhere, the number of users will double or triple. Oh, really? That must be from that study of where the Fuckistan, when they legalized marijuana and they saw a double to triple use. Marijuana's not been legalized anywhere. How can you say based on experience elsewhere, marijuana use will double or triple? In fact, you want to see where marijuana use has doubled, it's in America compared to the Netherlands over the past 30 years. But he goes on to say this will mean an additional 17 to 34 million young and adult users in the United States. In addition, look, there are 16 million people smoking marijuana right now, adult users smoking marijuana right now. And you really think legalizing marijuana is going to double or triple that number? You really think we're going to go from 11% of the population to 1/3 of the population smoking marijuana? Really? I got a whole bunch of other questions for David Evans. I'm going to save them for hour 2. We're going to extend this rant into hour 2 in Toker Talk Radio, where we take your calls at 971-533-7111, and we hang out and have ourselves a good time. You can get access to the podcast downloads for hour 2 by becoming a VIP member of the Russ Belville Show. Your VIP membership supports the free podcasts and live stream for those who can't afford it. So be generous. Become a VIP member today by going to radicalruss.com/donate. You'll also get access to all the daily Toker Tune download pages, plus other benefits to appear later once we have a store and some events. It'll be worth it, trust me. Hey, that's all the time we got for hour 1. For Cannabis Carry and for Brian the Red, I'm Radical Russ. And until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant